Okay, it's been a while. I was supposed to speak back here, I believe it was in January, early January. So at the time, I was going to give a message about light and about the festival of Hanukkah. And the festival of Hanukkah is pretty interesting. If you do a little history, a little research, I was looking in the Apocrypha. You'll have the book of Maccabees in there. And the Maccabees crew, man, they were a tough bunch of guys. When you read their story, the father raised some pretty fine sons, but Judas Maccabees was the first one to kind of get out there and try to straighten things out. So at the time, you had some of the followers of which came out of the Greek conquest and actually came down to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, and he actually came into Jerusalem and desecrated the place. He went in there and cleaned house, offered swine's blood on the altar, and he killed a lot of the Jewish people, a lot of the believers of the time. If you look at it, look at the history, it's pretty bizarre what he did, which that gave rise to the followers of the Maccabees, who thought they were going to reclaim what was theirs legitimately. So one of the things they did after they started booting these guys out, they actually went in there and tried to clean up the temple area. And the altar had to be cleansed. So that took quite a bit of time for them to do that, but eventually they were able to do it. They were fighting back. And then came the part about the whole thing with what we call Hanukkah today, or the Festival of Lights. You won't find it in the Apocrypha, and you won't find this in the Bible. You will find Yeshua actually walking in the temple at the Feast of Dedication, all right, which is referring back to this time of Hanukkah. But the whole story of the candle, the lampstand burning for 8 days, you're not going to find that in the Apocrypha. You will find Judas Maccabees saying, we will have an 8-day festival to celebrate our rededicating the altar. As far as the story of the lampstand burning miraculously with 1 day's worth of oil for 8 days, you'd have to go to the Talmud, which has a lot of the oral traditions, which is interesting. I'm not saying that didn't happen, but the whole thing of rededicating the altar and that what they considered their sacred worship area, that story of the Maccabees is a wonderful thing to read. When you come down to our time today, many of the Jewish people, matter of fact, I think there were a lot of them here at the time. I wasn't speaking that time, but I think the last time I was here, they were in one room and they had, there were a lot of them were here for that festival, I believe. Yep. And there's a lot of things that go with that festival. There's things called the dreidel, and there's things called potato pancakes, latkes, good stuff. How that all ties in, I have no idea. But the point of the matter is, we want to take a look at something having to do with light, and something that, for the most part, the tribe of Judah rejects wholeheartedly, unless you're a Messianic Jewish believer. And that is this thing about the light of the world, okay? So we're going to take a look at some of these scriptures and see if we could come to a conclusion, how important and who is this light, and how does that affect us, and how will it eventually affect the world. I like, there's a line from a song. It says, there is a crack in everything, but that's how the light gets in. Okay? So when you think of everything that's broken, everything is cracked. And we were all cracked. But somehow that light got into our lives. So that's what we're going to take a look at today and see if we could make some connections here about celebrating not only at the time of the so-called Festival of Lights, but all year round. All right, so if you turn to Matthew chapter 5, verses 14 and 15, bear with me here. I'm using a new Bible here that Randy gave me a while back. It's a YRM Bible, which has some pretty interesting things in it. Randy always gets the newer version, so then he handed this one off to me. Because if you know Randy, he has about 50 different versions of Bibles. Matthew 5, verses 14 and 15. Here Yeshua's talking. He says, "You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid." And it says, "Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick. And it gives light unto all that are in the house." So here you have the Messiah telling his followers, you are the light. We're going to go to where he is called the light, but he's kind of passing that on to the believers. And anytime you see that word candlestick or usually candle, it's usually talking about a lamp, all right? It's a word that's kind of interchanged there, but it's actually talking about a lamp, and you're going to see how that ties in when we get near the end here. But if we go to the book of John, chapter 1. And I love reading John's message, whether it's this or whether it's 1st, 2nd, 3rd John or Revelation. He definitely had the inside line there. He had the connection. He was one of those three amigos that was always at something very important. But he takes things to a higher level. But in John chapter 1, verses 4 and 5, and it's talking about in the beginning, of course, when you get to verse 4, it says, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men." And verse 5 says, "And the light shines in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not." So earlier he was talking about John the Baptist coming on the scene, but he's saying he wasn't the light. He's preparing you for the true light. So here it's telling you who this light was. And then in verse 9, it says, "That was the true light which lights every man that comes into the world." So Yeshua is that true light that came into the world. If you go to John chapter 8, John chapter 8 and verse 12. It says, "Then spoke Yeshua again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that follows me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life." You know, there's a scripture that talks about the light coming into the world, but men love darkness. You're all familiar with that scripture. I think it's John 3:19. It's after the famous scripture of John 3:16, but you get to 3:19 where it says, "But men love darkness." Well, every time I see Aaron Rodgers play with the Packers, he's always yelling out 3:19, 3:19. And I'm thinking, what a true statement. Because a lot of times in the stadiums, you'll see people with a big placard out there, John 3:16. But he's yelling 3:19 all the time. Men love darkness instead, and that is the truth in this world. The darkness is definitely, when you look around at the world conditions, and you look, especially when you look east, you go over to the Asian countries, those people are held in absolute bondage. And those that are believers over there, they are meeting in secret. They are in labor camps. They are imprisoned. And it's a lot tougher being a Christian over there in those nations. Yet they are trying with all their, to the point of being either threatened or imprisoned or killed. But darkness does prevail over there. And the leaders, the guys that are in charge, the guys that are running the show, they haven't learned that fine lesson yet that we were talking about today in our little study about Nebuchadnezzar. He had to learn that the Most High rules in the kingdoms of men. But these guys are absolute dictators, and they decide who lives and who dies. And it's a terrible thing, but it's a testimony to men loving darkness. All right, John chapter 9, verses 1 to 5. John 9, verses 1 to 5. And as Yeshua passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Yeshua answered, Neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents, but that the works of Elohim should be made manifest in him. I must work the works of him that sent me, while it is day. The night comes when no man can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When you think about what went on here, man, we better read it. Verse 6. Verse 6, when he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay, and said unto him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sent. He went his way therefore, and washed, and came seeing. Now think about the reality of what you just read. Just think about if you'd have been there. If you would have been these guys, like the disciples, like John. Here you have a guy blind, and somebody spitting on the ground and making clay and rubbing it on his eyes. Definitely, you wouldn't expect this guy coming away seeing after something like that. But I look at it, not I. You could look at this. You know, we all know about DNA. And that's just man's way of producing or saying something, okay? But here you have the one that created the world, the one that was the actual word, the spokesman for the family of Elohim, going to a blind guy, taking some of his spittle, mixing it with clay, like he probably, when he took the clay to form Adam, and put it on his eyes. Which kind of tells you, in order to be able to see, you need that miracle. You need the miracle of the Messiah in your life in every way. And here was a perfect, very physical example. But I can only imagine being one of those guys to see that when that happened. And that guy, could you imagine the guy, how overjoyed he must have been after that happened? And you know the rest of the story, how he was telling the Pharisees, who did this to you? And he said, well, it's the guy that put the clay on my eyes. And finally they ousted him because he was saying, he kind of got him mad when he said, why do you want to be his disciple too? So, you're out of here. But just amazing things, examples of eyes being opened and the light of the world performing that. In John chapter 12, verses 35 and 36. John 12, verses 35 and 36. Then Yeshua said unto them, Yet a little while is the light with you. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness come upon you. For he that walks in darkness knows not where he's going. While you have the light, believe in the light, that you may be the children of light. These things spoke Yeshua, and departed, and did hide himself from them. So he was telling them they need to walk with the light while you have the light, because you are going to become children of light. Remember what we read in the beginning there in Matthew, where he says, you are the light. You're reflecting the Master. John verses 12, verses 44 and 46. John 12, 44 to 46. Yeshua cried and said, He that believes on me, believes not on me, but on him that sent me. And he that sent me seeth him that sent me. I am come a light into the world, that whosoever believes on me should not abide in darkness. So here again he's telling you who sent him, the purpose of his coming here, and how we are to reflect that same light. You know, there's examples in, we'll turn to these examples. Revelations chapter 1 and verse 20. Revelations 1 verse 20. Here he's talking about the mystery of the candlesticks, all right? And of course we all know what the candlestick, well, let's read it. The mystery of the 7 stars which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 assemblies, and the 7 candlesticks which you saw are the 7 assemblies. Now that word candlesticks, remember what I told you? If you look that up, it's a lamp. It's a lampstand, okay? Chapter 2, verse 1. Unto the angel of the assembly of Ephesus write, These things saith he that holds the 7 stars in his right hand, who walks in the midst of the 7 golden candlesticks. So here you have Yeshua. He is walking in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, or the 7 lampstands. What gives light unto a lampstand? Oil, okay. Yeah, you need oil going to that lampstand, okay? And not only does a lamp produce oil, it produces fire, okay? Fire coming out of there. But that light is to light up everything it comes into contact with. There's another example that I want to turn to about us being lamps or lights to the world, and that's Matthew 25. Matthew 25, verses 1 through 13. Ooh. 25, verses 1 through 13. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps, and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom comes. Go you out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, Give us of your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go you rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Master, Master, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch you therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour when the Son of Man comes. You know what I said before one time, I said, wouldn't it be great if we'd be all prayed up, spirited up, that we would be able to say to our brother, hey, let me help you get some oil here. But the message is that we all need to be awake. We all need to be that light he's talking about. To be that light, we need the oil. We need the fire going here. It's something that even in the book of Luke, it says it's the Father's good pleasure to give the Holy Spirit to those that ask him. Here these people are told, go and buy from those that sell. Now, the only thing I could think back, I think it was either Elijah or Elisha. He was dealing with the widow, and she had some debt, and he said, go borrow all the vessels you can and fill all those vessels. They were filling them with olive oil. And she was able to borrow all these vessels, so the house was probably filled up with buckets of olive oil all over the place. And eventually she was able to sell what was needed to pay off her debt. Now you could do, and this isn't a reach, I'm just thinking we are all vessels. And to go to him who's not only sells, but to gives his Spirit, to go to our Father who's more than willing to pour out abundantly his Spirit upon us, and believe that we have the connection. Here again, my favorite is John 14:23. If a man loves me, he will keep my words, and my Father will love him. We will come and make our home within him. In order for them to make their home in us, we have to be clean. We need the temple cleanser. It's not Judas Maccabees. We need the Messiah. He's the one that went into the temple and cleaned it up. It's supposed to be a house of prayer. That's what we're supposed to be. So here again, as we're coming down the home stretch in many ways, we all think we're coming down the home stretch, the last lap or whatever. It's time to be awake. It's time to have that fire burning. It's time to be an example to the people we see, a light to the world, because darkness is coming. In some places it's here, like some of those nations I mentioned to you, and some of the things that are going on in government. It's kind of strange times, but not to get you frightened. Remember, the Master said, don't be troubled. When you see this stuff happening, don't be troubled. Hang on with all your might. Hang on to the light. Okay. Luke chapter 11, verse 36. I think I mentioned this, but it doesn't hurt to repeat. Oh, no, I didn't. Luke 11:36. If your whole body, therefore, be full of light, having no part dark, the whole shall be full of light. And when the bright shining of a candle doth give thee light. So there shouldn't be this mixed, muddled mess within us. We should have pure, clean, bright, white light. I'm thinking of the future, where 1 John, when he talks about when he appears, we will be like him. We'll see him as he is. And when you think about Peter, what he talked about, when he says, we were with him on the mountain, we saw him transfigured. Something interesting that I like doing, there's a property up in Whitehall. It's called the Whitehall Parkway. And there's an old mine hole there with water on there. And when I go there in the afternoon, and the sun's shining down on the water, and there's just a little breeze going, that light, no matter where I move, it comes to me. It comes in a V toward me. And it's the ripples and the sun reflecting off of there. It's glistening white. It's so white that you almost want to put your sunglasses on. And I'm thinking, I could only imagine what it was like for those three guys to be on that mountain, to see that his clothes were so bright and glistening. Something in the future when we get to see him as he is, because we will be like him. Wonderful time coming. All right, so now that he is the light that came into the world, and he's telling us that we are to be the light of the world also, Let's go to the book of Ephesians, chapter 5. Ephesians 5, 6 through 11. 6 through 11. Ephesians 5, verses 6 through 11. Let no man deceive you with vain words, for because of these things cometh the wrath of Elohim upon the children of disobedience. Be not you therefore partakers with them. For you were sometimes darkness, but now are you light. In Yahweh walk as children of light. For the fruit of the Spirit is in all goodness and righteousness and truth, proving what is acceptable unto Yahweh. And have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. And then verse 14. Wherefore he said, Awake thou that sleepest, and arise from the dead, and Messiah shall give thee light. That's future, but it's also now. Wake up. All of us are to be awake, to have that light burning within us. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 15. We'll start with verse 14. Do all things without murmurings and disputing, that you may be blameless and harmless, the sons of Elohim, without rebuke in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. Colossians chapter 1, verses 12 and 13. Colossians 1, 12 and 13. Give thanks unto the Father, which has made us meet to be partakers of the inheritance of the saints in light, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. We're out of the darkness now. Now we walk in the light. And that needs to be the Messiah, the Father and the Messiah living inside of us, bringing that light out. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. First Thessalonians 5 and verse 5. You are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. 1 John chapter 1. 1 John chapter 1. And verses 5 to 7. This then is the message which you have heard of him, and declare unto you that Elohim is light, and in him is no darkness at all. If we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. But if we walk in the light, as he is in the light, we have fellowship one with another, and the blood of Yeshua Messiah, his Son, cleanses us from all sin. 1 John chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. He that saith he is in the light and hates his brother is in darkness even until now. He that loves his brother abides in the light, and there is none occasion of stumbling in him. Loving our brethren. I mean, the Messiah gave that message over and over again about loving one another, especially in John 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, all of those chapters. You'll find that repeated over and over again. In this time, we have a time of the wolf came, the sheep are scattered. Just recently, I was able to go to a funeral of one of the brethren that has been in a nursing home for quite a few years. And you'll see other people from other churches of God, the same old thing. I'm thinking we got to stop meeting like this. I mean, it's important that we see each other. Of course, you hug. Great to see you. But wow, we're going to give account. Leaders are going to give account for keeping people separated. And some of the answers aren't going to fly. They're not going to work. Because he's going to say, I gave you enough messages. I gave you enough scriptures, what I want you to do. And here again, to be a light into the world, that means everybody you come into contact with. And there's people that, I told you a while back, I went to the Adventists, they were having this during the week. They had like a 23-part thing about, are we in the end of the line here, the end of days? And wonderful people. We have a lot of common ground. And I think sometimes we put our quills up too quickly. Because I did meet a guy there that learned almost everything he knew from back in the Worldwide Church of God days. He used to get the plain truth forever. He goes to the Seventh-day Adventist, but he also goes on Sunday to another church. And they call him a double dipper, but a real nice guy. Had the same last name as me. He's actually a neighbor of mine up in the area. But it opened doors for great conversation. I was able to share with them ideas about, I noticed you led it up to the people to embrace the holidays. And I said, wow. I said, that's hard to understand. And I said, here we have God's holy days. And I also talked to them about the 3 days and 3 nights. And in John's account, when he talks about that Sabbath day was a high day during the week of the crucifixion, they were not aware of that. You don't know where that can lead to in a person's life. But to say to them, I believe you're legitimate. I believe you do know the Creator. And I believe we all need additional information or growth. And never to the point where we say, hey, I got it all covered here. I know all these answers. I've been around for a long time. No way. It's always a learning process. To keep the light burning, to maybe let the light burn a little bit brighter, to get it out from underneath the bushel basket or whatever else. But anyway, and what I said earlier about believing that the Father and Son dwell within you, and that is the temple being cleansed, letting your light shine out there to a broken world. Where was I here? 1 John 2. Okay. Revelation chapter 21. Revelation 21, verses 21 through 25. And this is talking about the bride, the New Jerusalem. Earlier, John gives you that information when the angel says, "Let me show you the bride," and it's the New Jerusalem coming down. Okay, but in chapter 21, verses 21 through 25, and it says, "The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Every several gate was of 1 pearl, and the street of the city was of pure gold, as it were transparent glass. And I saw no temple therein, for Yahweh, El Shaddai, and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of the sun, neither of the moon, to shine in it, for the glory of Elohim did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. And the nations of them which are saved shall walk in the light of it, and the kings of the earth do bring their glory and honor into it. And the gates of it shall not be shut at all by day, for there shall be no night there." That coming time and the Father and Son are the light. What are we gonna do about the sun and moon, the moon situation? What are we gonna do? Here you have the Son and the Father and Son giving that light, and we are that temple, them dwelling in us just to a bigger extent. A light to the world, a light to the nations. That's our destiny. Can you imagine? That's going to be just absolutely tremendous. Now, getting back to the Feast of Hanukkah. Okay? Do you need a menorah to light up every day? It could be a great reminder. Sometimes physical reminders are pretty interesting. It might teach you a lesson. Do you need a dreidel? I really don't know what a dreidel is. I think it's something you spin. It's something you spin. Our latkes. I wouldn't mind having a latkes. My mom used to make good latkes. They were good. Potato cakes. But here again, if you have all of that and you don't have the Messiah, you got a bunch of customs. And you know what Yeshua says about customs? They are traditions of men. So the day will come, I'm hoping, and we see it in some Messianic believers, that all of those customs they did, all of a sudden come alive for them once they put the light into it. Once they put the Messiah into everything from Passover, Days of Unleavened Bread, Feast of Trumpets, Pentecost, Feast of Tabernacles, Day of Atonement, Last Great Day. Once he is put in there, all of a sudden, boom, the light goes on. The reality comes. Now, we've been blessed. We've been blessed to come out of some crazy backgrounds. I know I ran in darkness, and the time has come. We don't run in the darkness anymore. We don't want to be muddled. And the world is constantly saying, come back, come back. Don't want to go back there. Once you tasted the good, you don't want to go back. So as we are approaching these times of darkness, hang on to the truth that the Messiah is that light living inside of you, and you being one of his lamps to everybody you come into contact with. Don't blind them, okay? I remember the old expression when they ask you what time it is, don't tell them how to build a watch. Be gentle, be wise, but share that light with them. Share the true light of the world. Because that's what our whole calling is about. He is the one that provides the light between the Father and him living inside of us and these temples being cleansed. We can be an effective tool of bringing light into a world that loves darkness.